casting.
Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Bassett Law Planning Committee. Emergency legislation passed by Parliament back in March, which incidentally expires on the 24th of September, I think, enables us to meet like this and to take decisions. Hitherto, we all had to be in the same meeting room, but the emergency legislation suspends that requirement. Particularly welcome to members of the public. There may well be members of the public here who are tuning in for the decision on Randskill, on the application for Randskill, and we will get to that probably in about 10 minutes' time. In fact, it is the only application that we have to consider this evening. I have been reminded to remind members that they should be in the room on their own. They should not have anybody else there. I've no reason to suspect that we have abused that rule hitherto, but it is a reminder that I issue. First task tonight is to do a roll call to ensure that everyone is connected. And I will start with councillors. And in alphabetical order, Councillor Brand.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Challoner.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charlesworth.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Great. Councillor Fielding.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Oxby.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Quigley.
Councillor Quigley has given his apologies, but he has a meeting that is overrunning, so he might attend just later in the meeting.
Okay, so if you're able to notify us if Councillor Quigley does contact us, yeah?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Sanders.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, present, Chair.
And I am Councillor Pidwell, the chair of tonight's meeting. That means there are 9 councillors and at the moment, and we will vote on the application in due course. This is a public meeting, but I do have to inform the public that the only members of the public who can speak tonight are those who've made a prior request to, and we do have 3 speakers for that. I'd like to introduce now some of the officers. Ellen Hinsley, are you with us?
Present, Chair.
And Ellen is the clerk of the committee, so she will be taking the minutes and recording the vote. James Lavender, are you with us?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Mr. Lavender is the facilitator, making sure that the connection stays connected, and will organise the public speakers in due course. The chief planner tonight, Mr. Krozak, are you with us?
I'm present, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And the council solicitor, Mr. Wormwood.
Yes, good evening, Chair.
Thank you. And those 2 officers will assist us in making our deliberation. Should we lose connection, I will adjourn the meeting for a period of 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and we will re-establish contact in that time. So moving on to the agenda, agenda item number 1 is apologies. Do we have any apologies tonight, Ellen?
We have apologies from councillors Freeman and Tomlinson. As James said, Councillor Quigley may join us later on.
Thank you very much. And do we have any declarations of interest by members tonight?
No, none declared, Chair.
And any by officers?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of August, to be found on pages 5 to 12 of your agenda. I will assume that they are an accurate record of the meeting, unless any member wishes to dissent from that. So if anyone does dissent, either to abstain or to object, please speak now.
I wasn't present, so I will abstain, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Schiller abstain as I wasn't present. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so those minutes are passed as an accurate record. Agenda item number 4 is minutes of the planning consultation group meetings held between the 10th and the 24th of August. And you can find those on pages 13 to 22. The planning consultation group is a subcommittee of this committee, and they give advice to officers on particular applications before them. Agenda item number 5 is the outstanding minutes list on page 23. 2 items on that which report, I think, sometime next year. Agenda item number 6A is the public interest test. Ms Beverley, Alderton, Sandbrook, Head of Regeneration, has deemed that all the reports on the agenda tonight are not confidential. So we move on to the Randskill application, which you can find on beginning on page 27. This application is for full planning permission to erect 20 dwellings, which would be a mix of 3, 4 and 5 bedroom properties with associated parking and access and the provision of communal open space on land south of Randskill Churchyard, Great North Road, Randskill. Mr. Krozak will present the application. So when you're ready, sir, please start.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarification, is everybody able to see the slides at the moment?
I can, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Full planning permission is
Yes,
proposed
thank
for the erection of 20 dwellings comprising a mixture of 3, 4 and 5 bedroom properties. The application site covers an area of approximately 1.5 hectares and comprises open grassland which is enclosed by mature hedgerows. This slide shows the application site outlined in red and shows the position of the site in relation to the surrounding settlements of Torworth to the south and Randskill to the north. It should be noted that the boundary that separates the parishes of Torworth and Randskill is directly to the southern boundary of the site and is shown as the dotted line. This slide shows the relationship between the site and surrounding properties, with the main built form of Torworth lying to the south of the site to the eastern side of Great North Road. This slide shows the proposed layout of the site. So this is orientated 90 degrees to the previous slide. So Great North Road is running to the bottom end of the picture. So north is actually pointing to the left of the slide. The dwellings will be served from a private driveway with access being taken from Great North Road. To achieve the required visibility displays, 3 street trees would need to be removed. This slide shows how the site would be landscaped and laid out. It's proposed to plant a total of 48 trees within the development, along with hedgerow and further ornamental planting. This slide shows one of the buildings proposed, and this particular building contains 3 dwellings, all of which would be 3-bedroom. This slide shows one of the examples of a bungalow house type. And this slide shows an example of a 4-bedroom dwelling as proposed. So the next few slides are just visuals of the site, which are just rendered for artistic purposes to give an idea of how the site will appear. So this will be a view into the site from Great North Road. So this is a view internally within the site. So moving on to the photographs and the site characteristics, this is a view across the frontage of the site looking south towards Torworth. The 3 trees that are proposed to be removed are shown on the photograph. So the tree in the centre of the photograph next to the street light pole, the tree towards the right hand side of the photograph, there's a smaller tree, and then the tree just beyond that are proposed to be removed to secure the required visibility splays. This is the view looking across the front of the site in a northerly direction towards Ranskill. This is a view from the southern edge of the site, and this is looking south into Torworth. This photograph shows the dwellings that are positioned to the south of the application site. This is a view looking in an easterly direction along the southern site boundary. This is a view from the southwestern corner of the site looking in a northerly direction. The churchyard lies beyond the mature hedgerow that you can see that extends across the picture. Moving on to the report, consultee comments are summarised on pages 30 to 33. It should be noted that the Highway Authority have raised concerns regarding the internal layout of the scheme, specifically regarding the visibility of vehicles emerging from the dwellings onto the private driveway. Both Torworth and Ranskill Parish Councils have objected to the proposal, and these comments are summarised on pages 33 and 34 of the report. 11 letters of objection have been received, and the matters raised are set out on pages 34 and 35 of the report. The report makes it clear that the scheme has to be considered under the planning balance test contained within paragraph 11 of the NPPF, as the Council's adopted core strategy policies are now considered to be out of date. This means that the development should be considered under the planning balance and should be approved unless the harm arising from the scheme would significantly and demonstrably outweigh its benefits. The report identifies that the delivery of 20 dwellings on the site will help to build a strong competitive economy in Torworth and would help maintain and enhance the service provision within the village and within the neighbouring village of Ranskill. As detailed on page 39, the applicant has submitted a landscape and visual impact appraisal that assesses the impact of the proposal on the surrounding landscape. The report concludes that the proposed development is considered to be in keeping with the linear form of the village setting, while in keeping with the local settlement vernacular and the setback building frontage along Great North Road. The proposal is not visible from the wider landscape and visible only from a short section of Great North Road. Concern has been raised that the development would lead to the coalescence of villages of Torworth and Ranskill, eroding the character of both the villages. Page 40 of the report states that the edge of the application site is approximately 270 metres away from the church in Ranskill. Since the publication of the report, the applicant has submitted a further detailed topographical survey that shows the distance between the church and the closest dwelling is proposed to be 307 metres. Given the nature of the proposal, the council engaged an independent chartered landscape architect to assess its impacts. As outlined on page 39 of the report, the conclusion was that the scheme would not have a substantial visual impact unless in very close proximity to the development, and the visual impact on the surrounding landscape would not be significant. The development would be accessed from Great North Road and the dwellings served from a private driveway extending through the site. Page 41 sets out the Highway Authority's concerns regarding the internal layout of the scheme. Manual for Streets provides guidance stating that the absence of wide visibility displays at private driveways encourages drivers to emerge more cautiously and reduces vehicle speeds. It should be noted that the Highway Authority have not raised any concerns regarding the access onto Great North Road, and the visibility displays can be achieved through the removal of 3 street trees. In terms of ecology, the applicant has undertaken a detailed survey that has made recommendations which have been addressed within the detailed planting scheme submitted. The applicant proposes a robust planting scheme comprising of 48 trees, hedgerows and ornamental planting throughout the site. Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust have not raised any objections to the proposal. The Council's consultees have identified what infrastructure contributions will be required to make this scheme acceptable in planning terms. Excuse me. The requirements are listed on page 45 of the report, and the commuted sum requirements amount to £15,375. The applicant will also provide 20% of the dwellings on site as affordable units. Having considered the benefits outlined on pages 46 and 47 of the report, this scheme is recommended for approval subject to the completion of Section 106 agreement and the conditions outlined from page 47 onwards. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, and thank you very much for that. As I said earlier, we have 3 speakers tonight, and the first is the District Councillor for the area, Councillor Paul Nichols. Are you with us, Councillor?
Good evening. Yes, Chair, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Thank you. Welcome to the Planning Committee.
Thank you.
You, as will the other speakers, have 3 minutes to speak. Your time will be timed by the solicitor, and we will remind you when you have 30 seconds remaining. And we would ask you to be precise and finish at 3 minutes. So, when you're ready, over to you, sir.
Thank you. I'm a District Councillor for the Ranskill Ward, and I've been asked to represent both parish councils of Torworth and Ranskill in objecting against this development. Firstly, I'd like to point out that the site for development falls outside of the designated Ranskill development boundary, meaning extending the village beyond its intended boundaries. Ranskill also included this development into its neighbourhood plan, and it was given a reference of NP11 during the consultation period. During that consultation period, it received an overall rating of 38%. 25% agreed and 13% were on the border of maybe. Because the figure was so low in comparison to other sites that were proposed to be developed within Ranskill, it didn't make it through to the second public consultation for the neighbourhood plan. The main reason that people gave for this was seemed to be that it was the ribbon development stretching across along North Road being too close to the cemetery and spoiling the open aspect of the countryside that we enjoy between the 2 villages. The 2 villages do work together, and they believe that and they have a good relationship, but they believe that by building on a limited stretch of green space between the 2 villages, the development will lead to the erosion of the separate identities of both of those villages. Furthermore, we also believe that 20 houses on the proposed site is overdevelopment. It's not within easy walking distance of Ranskill, where all the local amenities are. It will therefore put stress on highways, parking at the local amenities for the shop, and the traffic lights where we already have issues with excess parking and lack of access to get down the road. In conclusion, both villages are strongly opposed to the development as they believe that it will take away more from them in terms of pressure on local amenities, pressure on highways, and the loss of the identity of both villages, ultimately more than it will deliver. Thanks, Chair. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much. The second speaker tonight is Councillor James Halliwell from Torworth Parish Council. I should explain that our rules only allow the parish council from the in the area that the site is located to have an automatic right to speak to us. So tonight, Councillor Halliwell appears as an objector, although he is in fact Vice Chair of Torworth Parish Council. So, Mr. Halliwell, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, so the 3-minute rule applies to you equally. So when you're ready, sir, please go.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for considering these comments. The 120 home parish of Torworth is not anti-growth. It has grown by 10% via planning consents and active builds in the last 5 years. The proposed 1.5 hectare site is not in the settlement boundary of Torworth or Ranskill. There are still circa 8 hectares of undeveloped land within Torworth and 26 within Ranskill settlements. BDC has identified enough residential land for 10 years. The necessary in-hand requirement is of course for 5. Therefore, this site is not required and the tilted balance test loses weight. If passed, the 250 residents of Torworth would be expected to cover the additional precept and parish costs from a 25% increase in their settlement population. However, the site is within Ranskill parish, who would receive the SIL and other financial support. The developers have agreed to a policy compliant amount of 4 affordable homes. Comments have been made that at this base level, as all development sites must adhere, this is not a development seeking to solve an affordable housing problem and does not merit significant weight. Concerns have been raised that the estate will compromise the tranquil and respectful nature of the adjacent cemetery and Commonwealth war graves. Also raised is that a 60-metre stretch of 30-plus-year-old hedgerow on the pre-1850 parish boundary with the grazing field, which should be afforded important protected status, has been removed on the southern boundary. The application seeks to retain all internal roads privately. This potentially gives a feel of a future gated community which could hinder assimilation with the local community. As stated, highways have recommended the site for refusal. They state would not offer a suitable and safe means of access to occupiers. Surprise has been expressed that this is only considered to weigh slightly against the proposal. Ranskill's draft village plan has established an area for growth of 111 houses to the north of the village, plus an additional 42 already consented. This site was considered but discounted as discussed. Within the plan's design guide, the area of open land between Ranskill and Torworth is specifically delineated with a green arrow. The sentiment of retaining open countryside and non-coalescence between
seconds left
is clear, even if the final plan is not yet adopted. If passed, this application will set a precedent for an increase in coalescence of rural villages into the creation of small towns, eroding the very character of North Nottinghamshire's rural heritage and communities. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And the final speaker tonight is Mr. Dean Dixon, who is the applicant for this. Mr. Dixon, are you with us?
Mr. Dixon, can you unmute your microphone, please?
Yeah, is that, sorry, yeah, are we okay?
Yeah, we can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, Mr. Dixon, so you two have 3 minutes. So when you're ready, please present.
Right, good evening, everybody. So my name is Dean Dixon. I'm one of the directors at Rose & Co. So firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to the committee members for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I would also like to thank John Krochizak for such a thorough and well-constructed report. We naturally fully support the officer's recommendations. Rose & Co Homes are a workshop-based business, and I'm Retford born and bred. As a resident of Bassetlaw with a passion for property development, I have a natural interest in architectural design and the impact of new developments for myself and for my children's future. The company has been trading since 2014, building small, well-designed and high-quality developments. We employ all local trades from Retford, Worksop and surrounding areas within the county. With a normal run rate of between 50 and 100 local trades, this particular development will maintain job security for the existing team and will create additional employment. As a business, we invest heavily into the younger generation with 12 current apprenticeships running. This development will equally be secure, but also generate a further need for new starters joining the industry. So Rose & Co Homes' most recent development is in Barming Moor, Retford. So although this development is very different in design, the principle of quality standards are the same. We take great pride in setting ourselves apart from the mundane box on a postage stamp. All of our properties are spacious family homes, are sensitively designed, built in a quality of palette of materials and situated on larger than average size plots. The Rose & Co team spent approximately 12 months designing the site at Torworth. We wanted to make sure that we captured the historic design of the village, staying away from the traditional estate style development. We feel strongly that Torworth heritage has been captured within the design. Looking at historical Torworth from an aerial view, we have emulated the traditional arrangement of buildings designed around a courtyard. The materials palette and appearance is also reflective of the traditional farm buildings. The design has ensured that we have a great collection of homes ranging from houses to bungalows, inclusive of 3, 4 and 5 bedroom properties, and a proportion of affordable housing in the form of 4-number starter homes well positioned within the site. We really do hope you approve and share the passion of what we believe is a credible, well-designed development, bringing new, high quality, including affordable family homes, while supporting the local economy. Once again, I'd like to say thank you for this opportunity to the committee members, and thank you to John Krojizek. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Right, I'd like to return to Mr. Krojizek and wonder if you can give a summary of the pre-committee questions that members asked. And again, for the benefit of the public, members they obviously get the papers a week before tonight, and we are encouraged to ask planning officers questions for points of clarification and understanding. And Mr. Krojizek will read out any that's been received for this one now.
Thank you, Chairman. To summarise, questions have been received in respect of school place projections, concerns of the Highway Authority regarding the proposed driveway layout, the landscaping of the site, the removal of the trees and the distance between the site and existing play facilities. In response, it was confirmed that the County Council do not provide school capacity projections when they do not require a contribution. But as the Education Authority, they have confirmed there is sufficient capacity to accommodate the places arising from this development. The local planning authority do not consider that the internal layout of the scheme would have a detrimental impact on highway safety, having regard to the guidance within Manual for Streets. The applicant has provided a detailed, fully scheduled landscaping plan, and the impact of the 3 street trees to be removed is considered to be mitigated by the substantial planting proposed within the scheme. And the nearest formal play facilities are around 150 metres away on Mattersey Road in Ranskill. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Is that 150 metres or 850?
850. Did I say 150? So I do apologise.
That's what I heard. I don't know if others did, but that's what I heard. So the play facilities are 850 metres away. Thank you. Okay, now it's the opportunity for members to ask questions, and we'll continue with the existing format. I will go around each member 3 times, twice to invite any questions, and the 3rd time to make any comments or observations on the application. And as usual, if you don't want to make use of those 3 opportunities, if you could let me know, then I won't have to come to you on subsequent rounds. So I will start with Councillor Brand, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to gain some clarification on this issue of the 2 parish councils. My understanding is that this is located within Ranskill Parish Council's boundaries, but the gentleman that we heard speaking from Torworth Parish Council said that the responsibility would fall to Torworth ratepayers. So I don't understand that. I'd like some clarification on that point, please.
Okay. Mr. Krozak, I don't know if you're able to explain that.
As I showed in the presentation, the parish boundary does run directly across the southern site boundary. So the site formally lies in Ranskill Parish, but is effectively a visual extension of Torworth. So maybe in terms of the parish council's comments, I think that their opinion is obviously Torworth is effectively being extended by this development and therefore is seeing the impact of the dwellings as proposed, whereas Ranskill would be having taking the proportion of any SIL monies that are payable. Obviously, that isn't a material planning consideration for a refusal. The development would be paying the required Section 106 contributions and any SIL contributions that it would be liable for. So it is mitigating its impact. It's just a little bit of an anomaly that it lies within a different parish to the village that it's effectively visually extending and most associated with.
Thank you. I think you've confirmed what I thought. I can't see what costs there would be to Torworth Parish Council. You say that the impact might be greatest, but I don't see that as being a financial impact. Would I be correct in thinking that?
Not as far as I'm aware. I may stand to be corrected on that point, but I'd probably concur with you on that, Councillor Brand.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Challant, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a question and obviously an observation. Having spent many years at Harworth Colliery, which only looks a stone's throw away from Ranskill, there was major coal extraction underneath the area of Ranskill Torworth, and one of the coal faces actually finished on the back road near the King and Miller at the edge of Retford. So that's how far coal was extracted from Harworth Colliery. And this coal seam was called the Deep Soft, and the coal extracted was between 1980 and 2006. Ranskill, I can't speak on behalf of Torworth, but I can speak on behalf of Ranskill. Ranskill has suffered quite a bit in the past from mining subsidence, which was caused from the coal extraction of the Deep Soft. It speaks as it says deep. It was deep. It was about the best part of a mile. The coal extracted was roughly round about a 12-foot seam. So gradually, as it's dropped down and the ground settled, there has been properties which have had to be underpinned and everything. I've gone through the thing and I cannot see any mining subsidence report. And obviously, the Coal Authority gives the licence to extract the coal. So what I can't understand is a development like this, why there hasn't been some form of mining subsidence survey, because the area is renowned to suffer from mining subsidence. So that's the question, basically, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Krozak, what do you say to that then?
So the Coal Authority have basically a map of Nottinghamshire, and all their coal seams and everything are mapped within that. So that map identifies high risk areas for development. So if the development will fall into one of these areas, the required assessments would be, as you've stated, land stability surveys, etc. And it may be the fact that development's completely precluded from those sites. This site hasn't picked up a constraint as being within a high risk area, so the applicant hasn't been required to undertake those assessments. But obviously, in terms of the footing solutions, foundation solutions, they will all have to be agreed with building control to make sure that they are appropriate to the land that's being developed, should planning permission be granted.
Do you want to come back, Councillor?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair, and thanks for that, John. The reason why, obviously, I picked up on the mining subsidence side, because the property, I think it was the gable end that virtually came away on Arundel Walk, next to the road, the actual main road that we're talking about, North Road, as it comes out of Ranskill. And obviously, mining subsidence doesn't just happen overnight. It could take 10 years for the ground to settle and things like that. But it's obviously the residents of Ranskill and Torworth are fully aware, more than likely have spoke about it at their parish council meetings, about the effect of mining subsidence. And I'm just quite surprised that nobody has actually fetched it up, seeing that they have suffered from it. And obviously, like you said, the Coal Authority does give you a map, but obviously sometimes the Coal Authority's things could be outdated, because like I say, Arworth Colliery shut in 2006. So you're talking 14 years, but in 14 years, the ground has got to settle, because obviously there's girder work, structure work. A lot of it under there was actually what they called bolted roadways. So when that lot comes down, it comes down with a big thump. So one of the biggest effects, I don't know if anybody has seen it, but talking about mining subsidence, is just on the outskirts of Bawtry, going towards Austerfield, where there's that massive lake appeared. That is down to mining subsidence, because the coal seam that was extracted under there was called the Barnsley seam, the top parts. But that's enough about coal mining. But obviously, I've made my point about mining subsidence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Charlesworth, do you have any questions?
I've got no questions or no further comments, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Fielding, do you have any questions?
I think one of the speakers spoke about building envelopes, and that this was outside building envelopes. Am I correct in that boundaries of building envelopes and things are not a reason that can be used for a refusal of an application?
Is that right, Mr. Kozak?
Because neither of the settlements currently have a neighbourhood plan, the report does detail why we consider the core strategy is out of date currently, and the settlement boundaries can't be afforded a great deal of weight anymore. So yes, you are correct in that respect, Councillor Fielding, and we do have to consider the benefits of the proposal and balance those with any impacts arising from the proposal.
Councillor Fielding, did you want to come back?
Yes, thank you for that. I've no further comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oxby, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. An observation and a question. The observation is I do have a concern about the removal of those 3 trees on the frontage there, as I've already spoken to John about, and he's been very helpful, thank you, with the replies that he's given me. But if we look on page 32, Chairman, if we may, it's just the comments of the Wildlife Trust, and they're concerned about what they perceive to be unnecessary removal of some hedging. Can we have a look, please, at precisely which hedging is envisaged would go? Is that possible, John, please?
To clarify those comments of the Wildlife Trust, it may be buried elsewhere in the report. Those comments were actually based on the originally submitted site plan and arboricultural survey, which showed some hedgerows as not being present on the site, and there was an assumption that they were being removed. The applicant subsequently updated the arboricultural survey and the site plan, and it did clearly show that there is no unnecessary removal of hedgerows to facilitate the development.
Councillor Oxley?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Is there any removal of hedging, let alone unnecessary removal?
Yes, to facilitate the access point.
So it is just the bit round the access point itself. So
Yes.
I think one of the speakers referred to they did say, what, 60 feet, did I hear, or something like that?
60 metres.
60 metres, I'm sorry, yes. So there is 60 metres. Sorry, John.
There's no proposal to remove any further hedging from the site, apart from to facilitate the access.
Thank you for that, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Richardson, do you have any questions?
Yes, please, Chair. I've got a couple, but I'll just have one. The clarification of the Highways Authority and their refusal, it makes a change actually, because we don't normally get a refusal or anything from them. And Highway Matters, which are two completely different, with two different viewpoints. I think Highways Authority have a good case against that, in the fact of the access to the development. And I'm a bit dubious on this cautious driving on an estate and the cautious driving of getting onto North Road. I live on a lovely estate, as do some few people on planning, and we do not have cautious driving some of the time on or off the estate. So that's my comment. And just the difference, please, John, between Highways Authority and Highway Matters, just to clarify the difference between the two. I know I've been on planning and I know myself, but I'd just like to hear it from you, if you wouldn't mind, please, John.
So the Highway Authority are obviously the statutory consultee, and then we address highway matters in the report. So the Highway Matters section of the report is an officer assessment of the proposal. In terms of the Highway Authority's comments, if I can just bring up the site again. So this is the layout of the site, and you could probably see it a little bit better when it's coloured.
Yes.
So in terms of the access onto Great North Road, there isn't any concern regarding that. It does offer sufficient visibility for vehicles egressing the site, and the width of the highway private driveway proposed there is sufficient to allow two vehicles to pass. So the Highway Authority haven't raised concerns regarding the design of the access itself. Their concerns relate to the internal design of the private driveway. So the forward visibility around the private driveway, and then the visibility of the first 3 or 4 plots that you can see to the left hand side of the access.
Yeah.
So the applicant's proposing hedgerow boundary treatments there, and obviously the Highway Authority have raised concerns regarding visibility of vehicles egressing from those private driveways onto the carriageway. Manual for Streets does refer to vehicles egressing when there is limited visibility, emerging more carefully, and it does encourage safer driving. So this is within the internal layout of the site, and given the design and the overall character of this development, people are going to be moving very slowly on the private driveway anyway. It's largely going to be residents and visitors using the private driveway, so they'll be very wary of maybe playing children and other people using that private driveway. So it's our opinion, but we wouldn't be able to justify a reason for refusal on highway safety grounds for those reasons.
Councillor Richards, do you want to come back?
No, that's fine. As long as we've got a lot of cautious drivers. Thanks, David. Thanks, Chair. I'll reserve another question for later, if you may, please.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Sanders, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. And it is about what's in the report under the highways, Nottinghamshire County Highways paragraph on page 31. And it talks about the conflict between pedestrians, cyclists and vehicles due to the inadequacies of the proposed footway and access arrangements. The amended layout would result in a detrimental impact on highway safety. And it goes on to end that the Highway Authority requests that the application is refused. Now, I'm a little bit confused about that because, as Councillor Richardson has rightly just raised, further on in the report, I believe on page 41, it says that the Highways Authority has not raised any concerns regarding the proposed access. Now, I am confused about that. Now, I do understand that it talks about displays and how they've been addressed. But my question would be, has the concerns about the footways, the footpaths and access for pedestrians being addressed, John? You know, because it does confuse me that we're saying in one part of the report that highways have refused it, and then we're saying that there's been no concern raised.
Okay, Mr. Krozak.
Yeah, similar answer to as I outlined to Councillor Richardson. So that the physical point of access onto Great North Road isn't a point of concern. It's the actual layout of that private driveway. So if I bring up the slides again, some of the visuals might be quite useful. Are you able to see those?
Yes, thank you, John.
The concern regarding pedestrian safety. So the applicant is seeking to design a shared surface. So the footways within the site are denoted with a different colour paving, as you can see probably on that drawing.
Yeah.
So those footways are 1 metre wide. And the Highway Authority has raised concerns that there will be some conflict between vehicles and pedestrians on the shared surface, and that footway would be inadequate. But in our opinion, if an adoptable standard highway was going to be installed within this scheme, and there is scope to do that within this development, it would completely erode the character that the developer is seeking to achieve here. So there is scope to put in a 5.5 metre wide carriageway with 2 metre wide footways, and that can be achieved. But the applicant's trying to create a certain character, and as officers, we've assessed the private driveway proposed against the guidance in manual for streets, and we feel that it is an acceptable arrangement.
Did you want to come back, Councillor?
If I may, Chair, and I apologise if I'm not getting exactly what's being said, but just to clarify, John, is the comment made on page 31 about the internal footpaths and not the footpaths associated with the access to the site?
So that's the internal footpaths, and then there's an external footpath that runs along Great North Road, that the site access would obviously have to cross. I'm just going to the photo. So because of the level differences there is a footpath that runs along that hedgerow. There hasn't been any concern specifically raised about that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think I get what that means now. Thank you, John. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Schiller, do you have any questions?
Sorry, yes, I do. Just to reiterate the points that have been made about the roadways, I do think that the pack is difficult to understand in terms of whether it be in its internal or the access onto the Great North Road, and I think that it's confused the majority of us. I'll actually wait to the next round of questioning because I've misplaced my question at this moment in time because I was listening so intently. But I was going to talk about the on page 31 about the footway widths and the visibility displays, but I think it's adequately been answered now. But I will have another question later. Thank you.
Good. I hope you find it in time. I'm assuming that Councillor Quigley hasn't joined the meeting, so
no, Councillor Quigley hasn't joined the meeting. I can confirm that.
Okay, thank you. I've just got a couple of questions at the moment, I think. Sticking with the internal layout of the roads. Well, no, first of all, we're dealing with a full planning application here, aren't we? So I just wonder if you could bring up the internal site plan again, please, Mr. Krazak. Yeah, that one, thank you. Yeah. So if this gets approved tonight, that's what we can expect to be built, yes?
Yes.
Fine, okay. So in terms of the roads, is our refuge department and the council satisfied that they can get one of their big lorries around the site, please? And the second question goes back to the Coal Authority. I mean, you answered to Councillor Challoner, you referenced them. So have they been specifically approached about this site and its safety from their point of view?
In terms of the internal layout of the site, firstly, the applicant has provided tracking details that shows a refuse wagon would be able to manoeuvre the site and turn appropriately and then leave the site in a forward gear safely.
Thank you.
So that's been fully tracked and the details provided. In terms of the Coal Authority, they wouldn't be consulted where it isn't in a high risk identified area, so they provide standing advice. So basically, if it isn't an identified area of high risk, they don't require a consultation.
And you have details of the high risk areas?
Yes, it's a mapped constraint.
Okay, thank you. Right, I will go round again. Councillor Brand. Any further questions or comments?
Yes, a couple of points. One is on the shared surfaces within the site. I don't have an objection to it. I like the idea, and I've seen it in place in various urban settings, but I've just never seen it in a rural setting. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just an observation. The other point is the removal of the 3 trees on the main road. I'm always averse to chopping trees down, but I understand that it may be necessary. However, is there along the length of the road, is there a whole series of trees, and taking 3 out would look incongruous? It's all very well to take 3 out. If it's 3 out of 20, it'll leave a huge gap in an otherwise nice view along the road of a whole series of trees.
Mr. Krozak, are you able to assist there?
The trees aren't evenly spaced, so it's not an even avenue of trees along Great North Road. It's difficult to see from that aerial photo, unfortunately. Some of the site photos does show the irregular spacing of the trees. So there are some planted closer together though, so the site is appearing on the right-hand side of that photo. So there are 2 fairly close together, then a gap to the next few trees.
Mm-hmm.
So they are fairly irregular in character.
Yes, my point is that taking 3 out of a whole row of trees would look incongruous. As I said, I'm not. I am averse to taking trees out, but understand that it is necessary from time to time. So, just an observation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to come back a 3rd time later?
Yes, please.
Yeah, fine. Okay. Councillor Challoner, any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't want to steal Councillor Schuler's thunder on this one, but I do know that she did send a question in to John, and obviously it involves that from my ward and obviously Councillor Schuler's ward, over the past months, past years, there's been a lot of development that's been passed, and obviously this has an impact on the infrastructure to do with schooling. Both myself and Councillor Schuler have had people from our wards explicitly disgruntled that their children have to be sent to the primary school in Ranskill, and I know Councillor Schuler has fought hammer and tongue to sort things out so that these children can be accommodated within Arworth and Berkopes. I don't like the way that sometimes the county council put themselves, even though they are the statutory body for education, to sometimes push kids around like pawns on a chessboard. I think a lot of things have to be taken into consideration. And when you read on this, that there's 20 dwellings going to be built or proposed to be built, which will additional 4 primary school places and 3 secondary. So suddenly, to me, the county council have always got a big say on stuff, but they're in charge of family planning now as well. So to me, I think they're totally out of order the way that they manoeuvre kids around, that everybody's got access to motor vehicles when they haven't. Some people have to use public services, and they haven't even said that there's a public service for transport within the plan. It's, oh, we'll look at it later on. So that's my comment on it, Chair, and I won't be commenting no more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up then is Councillor Oxford. Any more questions?
No, thank you, Chairman. Not at this stage, nor any more planned. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Yes, one comment, observation, please, Chairman. I agree with Councillor Brand about the trees, but what my concern always is, and I know it's not material and John's going to say so, but it's the planting of trees on a housing development that I have a problem with. Because once those trees are mature, there's always an argument on who cuts them down and who trims them. Who do they belong to, the developer or the council? Well, council don't do them anymore, so they're left to the private owner of that house. They can build put as many trees in as they want to compensate. But the trees on the highways actually get cut because they belong to county. But the trees on a developing site do not. And once they get too tall, There's always a conflict between neighbours. That's the observation, but I've got another question later, please, Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Krazak, I don't know if you want to comment on either of those two contributions from the two councillors.
In terms of the landscaping, there are trees within private garden areas, and when they mature, obviously, we do have the option to protect them with formal tree preservation orders. The applicant has provided a landscape maintenance and management plan, which would need to be maintained in perpetuity. And also one of the conditions proposed is a biodiversity management plan as well. So it would all be tied up in that, but we'd certainly want to ensure that the ongoing maintenance of the landscaped areas to ensure visual amenity and ensure the site was kept in a suitable condition moving forward and doesn't just fall on all the residents' shoulders.
Thank you. So, Councillor Sanders, any further questions?
Yes, Chair, if I may. Just going back to the roads on the internal layout, are these roads to be adopted by the County Council? And if not, what provision is there in place to maintain the roads to the correct standard? Would this cost potentially fall upon the people buying those houses?
Mr. Krazak?
It would be upon the developer to make sure the road is maintained in perpetuity. So if a management company is set up, it may well be the case that there is a service charge that residents need to pay. But obviously when they're purchasing the properties, that would be a decision for them to make, whether they would like to purchase the property on that basis or not.
And if I may interject, Councillor Sanders, I think there's a reference to the 106 proposed agreement that there would be an indemnity which would exempt the County Council from picking up any costs associated with the highway within this development. It would be a private road drive. Mr. Krazak can correct me if I'm wrong in that, but have you got any other comments, Councillor?
It's a comment, and it probably may be a bit of a mismatch to compare, but I do know within my ward, in a specific area, there are a couple of private roads, and to say that they aren't maintained wouldn't be an understatement. So I would be concerned about any arrangements put in place for actually maintaining the roads on the proposed development. That's my comment, Chair, and that's me done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schiller, have you found your question?
I have. It's around the landscaping and the biodiversity net gain on the bottom of page 32. It says in here that there's no information on the species of trees, but I think, John, you've pointed out that they have submitted a plan since this was written. Yes,
that's correct. It's a full landscaping schedule.
Right. So the landscaping schedule that they've submitted now, is that fully indigenous species that are that we would want to be seeing in our Nottinghamshire countryside?
In terms, I can't list every single plant species because it is very, very comprehensive.
John, you let me down.
And I couldn't, and we did try and put it into the presentation, but given the scale of the drawings, you wouldn't have been able to pick up the text. But in terms of the trees proposed, there's 8 lime trees, 5 white beam. There's an orchard comprising of 2 pears and 3 apple trees, 7 cherry trees. There's 4 Scots pine, 12 silver birch, 5 field maple, and then 2 magnolia trees.
They're indigenous, are they?
Sorry? It would just be the Scotch pine that I would be a little bit concerned about, but they do sound a little bit more in keeping. Yeah. Okay. One more comment. I do echo what Councillor Challoner was talking about. We have had a number of issues in our ward whereby we are told that children are to be schooled in the Ranskill area, and it concerns me greatly that we don't see any numbers within these reports of places that are available in the Ranskill schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, could I have two questions? The subsequent upkeep of a private drive, is that a material planning consideration that we should take into consideration tonight? Mr. Krozak?
I consider it's effectively managed by way of Section 106. So we are seeking to indemnify the Highway Authority from any future petitioning to adopt that highway. Obviously, once we've received a suitable maintenance schedule from the developer, it would be then for the developer to agree with any future residents, any ongoing costs associated with that. And that certainly wouldn't be a material planning consideration. That would be between the developer and the residents.
Thank you. And again, please, can you contradict me? But going back to the availability of primary school places, as one councillor said, we're talking about 4 additional places anticipated by Education Authority. Am I right in thinking that the speaker tonight for Torworth Parish Council didn't cite that as a reason to be concerned specifically? And I'm unaware in the report of any other local objector citing the school's capacity as an issue for as a reason for refusing this application tonight.
But certainly hasn't been raised by Torworth Parish Council. I'm just looking over it. It's just, I think it was general comments regarding lack of local infrastructure to support such a development. So I think it's just general infrastructure in that sense. Whereas the county council, where they can demonstrate there's shortfall in school places, will always ask for a contribution to mitigate the development's impact. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go around again for those who indicated a wish to have a further comment. Councillor Brand.
Yeah, just an observation. I've checked through the conditions, and 2 other areas of concern that I had were on the possible removal of hedgerows, and that's clearly stated within the conditions that they're to be retained. So I'm pleased to see that. I'm also pleased to see that there's got to be a bin strategy. So that was another area of concern that I had. So having read through the conditions, they answer most of the, well, if not all of the queries that I had. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Challoner.
No further questions, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richardson's next. Any further comments?
Thank you, Chair. No, it was just about the utilities, because I've just looked it up as well as Councillor Brand has. But the Vice Chairman of Torworth did say that they may have to cover the precept for Ranskill. I don't know whether you could answer that, John, whether or not they would have to cover the precept, being as the border is next to them. I wouldn't have thought that was possible.
I don't know the answer to that, unfortunately, Councillor Richardson.
It's one thing I shall look up and find out then. So yeah, I mean, it's just a thing that he said that was and what I'd spoken about. But the utilities was the main thing, and they've got the strategy there, so that's fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Schuller, any concluding comments?
Just that I do commend the recommendations regarding wildlife and the conservation of the area for the wildlife. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will try and sort of summarise the discussion, which has been a good one, I think. I start off by stating the obvious, that in the opinion of our officer, the benefits of the scheme outweigh the harms from it and therefore should be granted planning permission. The benefits of the scheme are laid out in the table on pages 46 and 47 and include some affordable housing, new residents to support local services, and the ongoing, and the revenues that would come from seal money and the new homes bonus, some of which would go to Ranskill Parish Council, and of course the ongoing council tax receipts and parish precincts. We heard an additional one tonight from the developer who laid great emphasis on his company being local and employing local people and subcontractors. We have the advantage that this is a full planning application, so we've had the opportunity to see the site, where the public space would be, where the houses would be, where the tree planting would be. So that's always useful to have that knowledge. Objections have included the comments from Highways about the internal layout, not the external or the access arrangement, but the internal layout. And we've had a good discussion about that. Objections came from people about the development being outside of the settlement boundary, but I have to advise that shouldn't carry weight at the current time because our policies are not in date. Some people have been concerned about careless drivers or inconsiderate drivers, but I don't think that's a planning consideration. Local people put great emphasis on the fact that this would erode the distance between, or the character between, the two villages. It's been described as ribbon development, and it would, as I say, erode the identity of Ranskill and Torworth. So I think that's it, really. So I hope that's a fairly accurate summary of what's been a long and detailed discussion. So I will now go around and record the vote, starting with Councillor Brown, please.
Sorry, I'm just checking up on the wording. So the recommendation is to grant, and I support the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, I should have read that out in full. So the recommendation is on page 47, which is to grant, subject to conditions and the execution of a 106 agreement, unilateral undertaking with the obligations as detailed within the infrastructure contributions and highway sections of the report. So, Councillor Brand, thank you. Councillor Challoner.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Charlesworth.
Grant.
Thank you. Councillor Fielding.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Oxby.
Thank you, Chairman. For.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. For.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders.
4, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
I support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I too support it. So planning permission is granted for this development. Thank you very much. There is no urgent any other business, so that concludes our business tonight. So thank you for your attendance and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Caster, can you